Oh, this is great. This is lovely. I do have a wonderful answer to this. Thomas Esson asks a question. Is there a question you have for an A-level celebrity, especially someone getting on in years, that you've been carrying around? Is there a question you've been carrying around that you want to ask if you ever happen to get the chance to ask them? Yes, there are two A-list celebrities, George Lucas and Francis Coppola, two of my all-time favorite filmmakers, two people with absolutely outsized amounts of influence on not just my life, but popular culture in so many ways. So many ways. The whole reason there is almost any film industry in Northern California is solely because of Francis Coppola. The only kinds of films that were regularly being made up here when Francis moved Zoetrope were porn films. San Francisco was a huge porn capital for the longest time. But there he is in the 70s, in the late 60s and the 70s, Francis Coppola is in LA. He's in his 20s. He writes the movie Patton. He makes some early films, but he enjoys a pretty high amount of success. He directs The Godfather before he's 30. And then looks around at Los Angeles in the early 70s and is like, F this noise, I gotta get out of here. I really appreciate someone who achieves success in a difficult to find success in industry, like the film industry, and immediately upon enjoying their success is like, I'd like to change this whole thing. And it's not like he was wrong. He moved up to Northern California to have his own control over his own kind of thing. He didn't like dealing with the studios. He wanted his own pipeline, and he built it. He not only built it, but he, like so many important filmmakers who are currently working, came through Zoetrope, worked with him on productions. A lot of them started in San Francisco commercials around the time I did, in the late 80s and the early 90s. And so Francis Coppola is there in LA and decides to move Zoetrope up here to San Francisco and creates a whole decades of Zoetrope's incredible output out of this beautiful city. And his protege, his young protege, George Lucas, who, he helps George get the financing to make THS 1138 into a feature film. It was George's thesis film at USC. And then George, after doing American Graffiti, also comes up here and is like, after doing Star Wars, down there in Van Nuys, is like, and in order to do Star Wars, he invents the special effects company. Like as an official, like there were effects companies attached to studios, stages here and there were shops attached to those places, but really like the modern special effects company. So like in addition to inventing Avid offline editing and Photoshop happening on his watch and Pixar happening on his watch and digital compositing, in addition to all of that, also like the import of Coppola and Lucas's contribution to film once they got up here is amazing. It's impossible to sort of estimate, or you have to just keep talking about it and telling different stories about it because it's too large to conceive. And I would love to sit down with these two guys and say, when I was in my 20s, I definitely didn't intersect with those levels of ambition that the two of you really seem to have. And I'd love to talk about the origins of those 2 points of view, about like, I have learned how this system works younger than most people do, and I learned enough to know that I don't like it, and I would like to create a different system that will yield different kinds of creativity. I am fascinated by that decision that Coppola and Lucas made to come up north. And I'd like to ask them how it's going, how they feel about it, what met, surpassed, or fell short of their expectations when they first envisioned it, and how has that changed over time? Because it's not often you can say a person changed an entire city, but it's not too much to say that those two folks did. They both changed LA by leaving it, and they changed San Francisco by coming here. It's a thing that I learned early on when I started going to Comic-Con. Comic-Cons are amazing because all your favorite people from all your favorite shows are always there, and it's just the best. And I'll tell you, being talent at cons, the green room is by far the most fun, getting to watch who gets along and who's having conversations and introducing yourself to your heroes and sitting and chatting with folks like, you know, Paul Williams and Vincent D'Onofrio. And yet, it turned out that the conversations I was always interested in when I got to Comic-Con was not with the movie stars. They're always really fun to meet, and I love talking to them about their output, but I always wanted to talk to the showrunners. I wanted to talk to the Damon Lindelofs and Carlton Cuses and Graham Yost. I'm fascinated by Vince Gilligan. I'm fascinated by how you create something with creative integrity at a giant scale. I felt like we were able to make Mythbusters with creative integrity at a moderate scale. That was a 30-person crew. It was not a giant operation by any stretch of the imagination. And working with a crew that large to make something that I cared deeply about, that we all cared deeply about, was its own specific journey. And the compromises that you need to make at scale are unique and difficult. And I'm always fascinated by that. Narain Shankar, showrunner on CSI and then The Expanse, has been one of my key consiglieres over my producing career, asking about ways in which you can shift and push culture and alter it and respond to it, and the best way to create a family that you could take care of as a crew. Those questions are always really fascinating to me. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.